My twin sister lived my life for 3 years while I was in a coma. When I woke up, she had taken everything. The first face I saw was my mother's. She was crying and squeezing my hand and saying my name over and over, except she wasn't saying my name. She was calling me Vanessa. I'm not Vanessa. I'm Victoria. Vanessa is my twin sister. My brain was foggy from the coma. 3 years of unconsciousness does that to you. And at first I thought maybe I'd heard wrong. Maybe the machines were too loud. Maybe my ears hadn't adjusted to being awake. But then the doctor came in and called me Vanessa too, and the nurses, and everyone else who walked through the door. That's when I started to panic. I'm not Vanessa, I said. My voice was weak and scratchy from years of not using it. I'm Victoria. Where's my sister? Everyone looked at each other with worried faces, the kind of faces people make when they think you've lost your mind. The doctor patted my hand and said confusion was normal after a long coma. He said my memories would sort themselves out with time, but my memories were fine. I knew exactly who I was. The accident happened on my 25th birthday, September 14th, 2019. I was driving home from dinner with my boyfriend, Marcus. We'd been together for 2 years, met at a marketing conference, bonded over our shared hatred of networking events, fell in love somewhere between the bad canapes and the open bar. He'd proposed that night, at dinner, a ring in the champagne glass, the whole cliché. I'd said yes. We'd kissed while strangers applauded. I was driving home with a diamond on my finger, and the whole rest of my life ahead of me. Then a drunk driver ran a red light. I don't remember the crash. I don't remember the ambulance. I don't remember anything until I opened my eyes in a hospital bed 3 years later, surrounded by people calling me by my sister's name. It took me 2 weeks to figure out the truth. 2 weeks of doctors dismissing my insistence that I was Victoria, not Vanessa. 2 weeks of nurses giving me pitying looks like I was a confused old woman who couldn't remember her own name. 2 weeks of my mother crying every time I corrected her, saying things like, the brain trauma must be worse than they thought. I wasn't confused. I knew exactly who I was. I just couldn't prove it. Vanessa and I were identical twins. Same face, same height, same weight, same voice. We'd spent our whole lives being mistaken for each other. At school, at work, at family gatherings where distant relatives couldn't keep us straight. But we weren't the same person. I was Victoria, the organized one, the ambitious one, the sister who'd gotten a marketing degree and a corner office by 24. I was the one who'd bought an apartment downtown with my own money, who'd saved $47,000 in a retirement account, who'd built a life from scratch. Vanessa was different. She'd never held a job for more than 6 months. She'd borrowed money she never paid back. She'd crashed on my couch for 3 months after her latest relationship fell apart and eaten my food without replacing it. I loved her because she was my sister, but I'd never trusted her. Now I understood why. The truth came out in pieces. First, I overheard a nurse talking to my mother in the hallway. It's remarkable how well Vanessa's been handling everything, taking over Victoria's apartment, keeping her job going, managing all the finances. Most people would have fallen apart. I strained to hear my mother's response. She's been a saint. I don't know what we would have done without her. My blood went cold. Taking over Victoria's apartment, keeping her job going, managing all the finances. That wasn't visiting. That wasn't helping. That was living. I demanded to see my medical records. The hospital social worker, a kind woman named Patricia Chen, brought them to my room. She was trying to be helpful, thought I wanted to understand my own treatment history. Instead, I looked at the name on every document. Patient. Vanessa Marie Hartwell, my sister's name. There's been a mistake, I said. These records have the wrong name. I'm Victoria. Victoria Ann Hartwell. Patricia's face fell. Sweetie, your family identified you when you were admitted. Your sister was listed as your emergency contact. She confirmed your identity. She confirmed her own identity because she wanted to steal mine. Patricia looked at me with that pitying expression I was starting to hate. Why don't we talk to Dr. Morrison about adjusting your medications? Confusion after a coma. I'm not confused, my voice cracked. I know who I am. Someone switched us. Someone told you I was Vanessa so they could take my life. Patricia nodded slowly, making notes. The kind of notes doctors make when they think you're having a psychotic episode. I was screaming the truth, and no one believed me. The breakthrough came when I remembered my fingerprints. Victoria and Vanessa had identical DNA. We were identical twins after all, but we didn't have identical fingerprints. That was basic biology. Even identical twins develop slightly different fingerprint patterns in the womb. I'd been fingerprinted once, years ago, when I applied for a security clearance at a government consulting job. The prints would be on file, verifiable, undeniable. I contacted Dr. Morrison, my attending physician, and made my case. I understand you believe there's been an identity confusion, he said carefully, but your family has consistently identified you as Vanessa, and there's no evidence. Fingerprints, I interrupted. I was fingerprinted documented for a background check in 2017. Victoria Hartwell. Those prints are on file with the FBI. Compare them to mine. If I'm Vanessa, they won't match. If I'm Victoria, they will. He was skeptical, but he agreed to make the request. The results came back 3 days later. The fingerprints matched. I was Victoria Ann Hartwell. I'd been telling the truth the entire time. The hospital administration went into crisis mode. Suddenly, everyone wanted to help. The social workers, the patient advocates, the hospital lawyers who appeared out of nowhere to manage the situation. They'd spent 2 weeks telling me I was confused. Now they were scrambling to explain how they'd let someone steal a comatose patient's identity for 3 years. We relied on family identification, the hospital administrator said during an emergency meeting. Your sister presented herself as Victoria when you were first admitted. She had access to your identification documents, your insurance information, everything. There was no reason to doubt her. No reason except that I woke up and told you the truth. He didn't have an answer for that. The police became involved the same day. Detective Sarah Okonkwo, 12 years with the fraud division, took my statement. She was sharp-eyed and skeptical, the kind of cop who'd seen every scam in the book and wasn't easily fooled. Let me make sure I understand, she said. You're claiming your twin sister assumed your identity while you were in a coma and has been living as you for the past 3 years. That's exactly what I'm claiming. And your evidence is fingerprints? Fingerprints that prove I'm Victoria, not Vanessa. Fingerprints that were on file years before the accident. She made notes. Lots of notes. We'll need to investigate. Interview your family. Review financial records. This kind of identity theft is complex. It's not just identity theft, I said. She stole my entire life. My apartment, my job, my savings, my boyfriend. Detective Okonkwo looked up. Your boyfriend? Marcus Chen. We were engaged the night of the accident. He's apparently been dating my sister for 3 years, thinking she was me. The detective's eyebrows rose. And he couldn't tell the difference? That's what I'd like to know. The investigation revealed everything. Vanessa had started her takeover within days of my accident. While I lay unconscious in the ICU, she'd moved into my apartment using my spare key. She'd called my employer, a marketing firm called Hartley & Associates, and explained that Victoria had been in an accident but would be returning to work as soon as she recovered. Then she'd shown up at my office. As me. My co-workers didn't question it. My manager didn't question it. Nobody thought to wonder why Victoria seemed a little different after her accident. They just assumed trauma had changed me. She worked my job for 3 years. She collected my salary, $87,000 a year, deposited directly into my bank accounts. She used my credit cards, my health insurance, my retirement contributions. She dated my fiancé. For 3 years, Marcus thought he was with Victoria. He'd stayed with her during her recovery, supported her through therapy, built a life with her in my apartment. He'd never noticed he was sleeping with the wrong twin. I confronted my mother on the 6th day. She came to the hospital alone. No father, he died when we were teenagers. No other family, just her, standing in my doorway with red eyes and trembling hands. You knew, I said. My voice was shaking. You knew she was pretending to be me. My mother's face crumbled. We thought you were never going to wake up. That's not an answer. The doctors said you had a 5% chance. 5%, Victoria. After the first year, they wanted to talk about end-of-life care, about removing life support. So, you let her steal my life? She said it would be easier. My mother was crying now. She said it would be easier for everyone if she just took over. She said you would have wanted her to have your life since you couldn't use it anymore. I stared at her, my own mother, the woman who had raised me, fed me, held me when I cried. She'd watched my sister erase me and done nothing to stop it. I wanted to live, I said quietly. I was lying in that bed fighting to stay alive, and you were helping her pretend I was already dead. I didn't know what else to do. You could have waited. You could have hoped. You could have protected your daughter instead of handing her identity to someone who wanted to steal it. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. I'm not Vanessa, I said. I never was. And you knew that. You knew. And you let it happen anyway. I hired a lawyer the same week, Margaret Okonkwo, no relation to the detective, specialized in identity theft and financial crimes, 18 years of experience, a reputation for winning cases that seemed unwinnable. The legal situation is complicated, she explained during our first meeting. Your sister has been using your identity for 3 years. She's established a documented pattern of behavior as Victoria Hartwell. Bank records, employment records, tax returns, all in your name. Because she's a thief. Absolutely. But proving it requires untangling 3 years of fraud. We need to establish which transactions were yours, which were hers, and which were made by her using your identity without authorization. Everything was her. I was in a coma. I understand, but the courts require documentation. The documentation took months: fingerprints, dental records, medical imaging from before the accident that could be compared to current scans. A forensic accountant named Dr. Richard Chen who spent 6 weeks tracing every transaction in my bank accounts. I had to prove I was myself to people who should have known me my whole life. My employer required a meeting with HR and legal counsel before they would acknowledge that their employee of 3 years was actually an imposter. The woman they'd promoted to senior account manager, not Victoria. A fraud. My bank required affidavits, police reports, and a court order before they would freeze the accounts that Vanessa had been draining for 36 months. My landlord required proof that the Victoria, who'd signed a lease, renewal 2 years ago, wasn't authorized to do so. Every piece of my life had to be reclaimed, document by document, signature by signature. And through it all, Vanessa refused to admit she'd done anything wrong. They arrested her at my apartment. My apartment. The one I'd bought with my own savings. The one she'd been living in for 3 years, sleeping in my bed, using my dishes, pretending it was hers. Detective Okonkwo called me afterward. She didn't resist, just stood there while we put on the cuffs. Did she say anything? She said, Victoria was never going to wake up. I was doing everyone a favor. A favor. She'd stolen my identity, my career, my savings, my fiancé, and she thought she was doing everyone a favor. Marcus came to see me 2 weeks after Vanessa's arrest. I almost didn't let him in. 2 years of dating before the accident, 3 years of dating my sister, and he'd never known the difference. But I wanted answers. How could you not tell? I asked. We were sitting in the hospital cafeteria. Neutral territory. We were together for 2 years. You proposed to me. And then you spent 3 years with her and never noticed? Marcus looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking. She acted different, he said quietly. After the accident, I thought it was trauma. I thought the crash had changed you. Changed me into a completely different person? No, He rubbed his face. She was quieter, more distant. She said she needed space, needed time to recover. I thought I was being supportive by not pushing. You thought you were being supportive by not noticing you were dating my twin sister. I know how it sounds. Do you? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe. The ghost of the person he'd actually loved. I'm so sorry, Victoria. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. You saw what you wanted to see. You saw a woman who looked like your fiancé and acted close enough. You didn't ask questions because you didn't want to know the answers. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. You slept with my sister for 3 years. You built a life with her. You probably told her you loved her, using the exact same words you used to tell me. He flinched. I did love you. I still don't. I stood up. Don't tell me you love me. You don't even know who I am. You never did. I walked out without looking back. The trial was 7 months later. The courtroom was packed. My case had made the news by then. Coma twin identity theft was the headline that stuck. People came to watch the spectacle, to see the sister who'd stolen a life and the sister who'd survived to take it back. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a gray blazer, looking exactly like me. Same face, same hair, same bone structure, but her eyes were different, cold, empty. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Jennifer Walsh, laid out the evidence methodically. 3 years of fraudulent transactions. Employment records falsified. Tax returns filed under a stolen identity. A systematic, deliberate campaign to erase Victoria Hartwell and replace her with an imposter. Vanessa's defense attorney tried to argue that my sister had been protecting my interests while I was incapacitated, that she'd maintained my apartment, my job, my relationships out of love and concern. Nobody bought it. When they called me to testify, I kept my voice steady. I woke up after 3 years to find that my sister had taken everything. My name, my career, my savings, the man I was supposed to marry. Everything I'd built was gone. And your family? The prosecutor asked. What was their role in this? I looked at my mother, sitting in the gallery. Her face was wet with tears. They helped her, I said quietly. They knew she was pretending to be me, and they helped her do it. They brought Marcus to testify. He explained in halting words how he'd dated Victoria for 3 years without realizing she wasn't the woman he'd proposed to. Did you notice any differences? The prosecutor asked. Some things were different. She was quieter, less ambitious. She didn't laugh at the same jokes anymore. And that didn't concern you? I thought the accident had changed her. Brain trauma, personality changes. That's what the doctors said might happen. Did you ever ask to see medical records? Confirmation of her identity? He looked at his hands. No. So you took her at her word that she was Victoria Hartwell? Yes. Even though the real Victoria Hartwell was lying in a hospital bed, abandoned by everyone who should have been fighting for her? He didn't answer. The defense called him a victim too, manipulated, deceived. But I saw the truth in his face. He hadn't been deceived. He just hadn't cared enough to look closely. Vanessa took the stand in her own defense. It was the first time we'd been face to face since I woke up. She looked at me across the courtroom, her mirror image, her twin, the sister she'd tried to erase, and her expression didn't change. You were basically dead, she said when asked why she'd done it. Her voice was flat, cold. Your life was just sitting there going to waste. I did what anyone would have done. Anyone would have stolen their sister's identity? The prosecutor asked. Anyone would have seen an opportunity and taken it. An opportunity? Victoria had everything I wanted. The job, the apartment, the boyfriend, the savings. She had everything, and she wasn't even using it. She was just lying in a bed, breathing through a tube, while her whole life sat empty. So you took it. I preserved it. Vanessa's voice rose slightly. I kept her job going so she'd have something to come back to. I kept her apartment so she'd have somewhere to live. I was doing her a favor. By dating her fiancé? By spending her money? By filing taxes under her name? Vanessa's mask slipped, just for a moment. She wasn't coming. Back! She spat. Everyone said so. The doctors gave her a 5% chance. I was supposed to just sit around waiting for a miracle while her life fell apart? So you admit you assumed her identity? I admit I stepped in when nobody else would. And you expected, what, that she would never wake up? Vanessa looked directly at me. Yes. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Identity theft, fraud, financial crimes spanning 3 years and 6 figures. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Hernandez, delivered the sentence 3 weeks later. Ms. Hartwell, you conducted a systematic campaign to erase your sister's existence. While she fought for her life in a hospital bed, you stole her name, her career, her finances, and her relationships. You showed no remorse. You expressed no regret. You argued that your actions were justified because you didn't believe she would survive. She paused. You were wrong. Victoria Hartwell did survive, and now you will face the consequences of your choices. 7 years in federal prison, full restitution of all stolen funds, lifetime prohibition on accessing any accounts or documents in Victoria Hartwell's name. Vanessa's face didn't change when the sentence was read. She just looked at me one last time with those cold, empty eyes, and smiled. My ex-boyfriend tried to apologize. He sent flowers to my new apartment, the one I'd rented after reclaiming my finances, long letters explaining how sorry he was, how he'd been deceived, how he still loved me. I threw them all away without reading them. If he couldn't tell the difference between me and my sister after 2 years of dating, he never really knew me at all. I had to rebuild my entire life from scratch. New apartment, new job. My old company had been too embarrassed by the scandal to take me back, even though it wasn't my fault. New bank accounts, new credit history, new friends who only knew the real me, not the imposter who'd worn my face for 3 years. It was hard. Some days it felt impossible. But I did it anyway. Because I'd survived a coma. I'd survived losing 3 years. I'd survived waking up to find myself erased. I could survive anything. My mother calls sometimes. She cries and begs for forgiveness. She says Vanessa manipulated her. She says she didn't know what else to do. She says she was grieving, convinced I was never going to wake up. I listen. I don't argue, and then I hang up without saying goodbye. Some betrayals are too big to forgive. Some wounds are too deep to heal. My own mother watched my sister steal my existence and did nothing to stop her. I don't hate her, but I'll never trust her again. Vanessa writes me letters from prison, once a month, regular as clockwork. Return address, Federal Correctional Institution, Danbury. I've never opened a single one. I already know what she wants. She wants her sister back. The sister she tried to erase. The sister she left for dead while she stole. Everything that made her a person. She can want that forever. She's not getting it. It's been 2 years since the trial. I have a new apartment, a new career. I started my own marketing consultancy, and it's actually doing well. New friends who never knew the imposter version of me. I've started dating again, carefully, slowly, with someone who knows the whole story and stayed anyway. I still have scars from the accident, a long one down my left arm, a smaller one above my eyebrow, reminders of the night that changed everything. But I also have fingerprints, the same ones that proved I was me, the same ones that saved my life. Sometimes people ask me if I miss having a sister. The answer is complicated. I miss the sister I thought I had, the girl I grew up with, the person I trusted to tell apart from myself. But that person never really existed. Vanessa was always waiting, always watching, always ready to take what I had if I couldn't protect it. She just needed an opportunity. The drunk driver gave her one. My twin sister lived my life for 3 years while I was in a coma. She took my apartment, my job, my savings, my fiancé. She took everything except the one thing that mattered. She couldn't take who I was, and when I woke up, I took it all back. Vanessa wanted my life. She got 7 years in prison instead. Some trades aren't worth making. She's eligible for parole in 2 more years. I'll be ready.